This morning, Policy Exchange launched Cities for Growth, a major new report calling for new garden cities and new attractive suburbs around our existing cities. The reasons for this are to both solve our growth crisis and housing crisis in a way that's politically acceptable. Garden cities are not a new idea. They've been around in the UK since the 19th century. Places like Welland and Letchworth are very successful, and between 1945 and 1975, the New Towns programme sought to replicate this success. Some of the new towns have also been successful. Milton Keynes, for example, has the second highest job creation rate in the country. However, there were problems with the new towns because government decided what they would look like and where they would go. In some cases, innovative designs have not stood the test of time. We think a better model is to look back further. Garden cities would be attractive because, in the same way that large aristocratic estates created large attractive developments in London, the value of each house and each street directly affects the value of the house and street next to it and the house and the street beyond that. That's why places like Pimlico or Belgravia are so attractive. They internalise externalities, to use economic jargon, meaning that what is created is more beautiful than small, piecemeal development. Garden cities aren't about forcing anything on anyone. We think what should happen is that business or developers should come forward with a proposal that would then be voted on by local people. The reason that local people would go along with this is twofold. Firstly, villages that were swallowed up within London are now desirable and attractive. Places like Blackheath, Greenwich, Hampstead, none of these are places that you wouldn't want to live. Garden cities will be attractive because of the externality point discussed before. The point is that developers want to maximise the value of what they're creating as a single whole, including the areas already inside it. The second point is around compensation. We think that those who live within the proposed boundaries of the garden city should be offered compensation worth around 75% of the value of their home if they're within the boundaries, or 25% if just outside. So the sums are quite large, and on top of that, you will probably get a better quality of life and a more expensive house at the end of it. We think that should be enough to allow people to go for this. The way this is paid for, of course, is through compulsory purchase of agricultural land. Agricultural land costs very little in the UK, at about £20,000 a hectare. Convert that to residential land, or land with planning permission, and you see it go to 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. That is how you can both allow the creation of infrastructure within the garden city, i.e. roads or capital spend like schools, hospitals, and incentivise people who are in the area to accept it. Planning reform in garden cities are not just about helping the South East. 6 fastest growing cities in England are York, Leeds, Norwich, Cambridge, Swindon and Milton Keynes. 2 of these are in the east of England, 2 of them are in Yorkshire and Humber, and 2 are in the South East proper. In addition, northern cities have more expensive office space than southern ones. A fantastic fact when you think about how much time and energy is spent trying to encourage people to relocate to these areas. If we are to reverse decline, we also need to remember that cities like Leeds, York, Milton Keynes, Cambridge are not just competing against English cities, but against cities in Europe and cities in the rest of the world. People often see rising house prices as some kind of semi-mythical wealth creation. It is nothing of the sort. All it means is that councils are not releasing enough land to build enough houses to meet the demands of the population. Of course, the fact that councils ration land is the reason why house prices have tripled, and yet housing output in 2010 was the lowest since the 1920s. In no other market would you expect to see that, but then we don't really have a market in land, we have a government-controlled planning system. One of the main effects of the high value of land is to drive out quality. If you've paid 1 million or 2 million for land that you'll build 30 homes on, the amount that is left over to pay for design quality, to pay for attractive materials, to pay for the gardens that people like between houses, is simply not there. On top of this, of course, come council tax levies, such as Section 106. These add further to the cost of development while reducing quality. The report proposes that instead of a plan-led system where local authorities control everything, we move to a system where local authorities still have a role in terms of providing strategic infrastructure, but that the people who have the final say on any particular development are those who are affected by it. On Greenfield and Brownfield sites, it's those who live near new developments who suffer or benefit from what is built. The best way to get good quality is by giving them a greater say, not by the endless micromanagement of local authority planning, which is completely unconnected to incentives and completely unconnected to those who actually have to live with what is built. Therefore, we propose that if less than half do not object to a proposal on brownfield sites, it should go ahead. This could cover anything from change of use to permitted development, i.e. someone wanting to build a conservatory in their garden. If you want to change your property and your neighbours, or most of your neighbours, do not mind, then it is not any of the government's business. On greenfield sites, we believe a similar push towards local control should happen. However, there is a difference. If you live near green space, then your value of your house is likely to be higher than it would otherwise be, by about 4 to 8%. There are various economic studies that show living near green space pushes the value of your property up. Therefore, if you have housing built near you, the value of your house will go down. At the moment, we are asking people to take a hit for the greater good of society. Unsurprisingly, many people fight back against this. We therefore propose a statutory compensation scheme for greenfield development, on top of allowing local people to reject or approve schemes. We all want to see attractive green spaces near our cities, but this is not what the Greenbelt has become. It now covers about 12% of England. It doesn't mean greenfield, it means particular bits of the greenfield around our cities. 2/3 of it is intensive farming or else has already been developed. What we are arguing is that local people should be given control over it, but that if development is allowed, there should be a levy that pays for attractive parks or nature reserves in the rest of the Greenbelt to ensure that we do have large amounts of attractive green space around our cities and for those who are living nearby. We think this is more realistic than simply pretending that for the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years you can build everything on brownfield sites. We know that the public agree, in the sense that a poll already found that only 30% disagree there should be no building on the Greenbelt. 70% say there should be some development on the Greenbelt. The key to this is making sure that what is built is attractive while retaining enough of the Greenbelt that people feel they are not being entirely swamped. We recognise that brownfield development is less controversial than greenfield development. That's why we don't include compensation. But we can't always build on brownfield sites. Immigration is not the main driver behind our rising demand for office space or even homes. The main driver for homes, for example, is the fact that almost half of homeowners have 2 or more spare bedrooms because elderly homeowners are living longer. This is of course a great thing if you're their children, except it does mean that you need family homes of your own, which simply don't exist at the moment. We believe that instead of a plan-led system, a presumption against interference should run through the planning system. Of course councils have a role, in terms of providing schools, roads and so on when an area expands or a population grows. But we don't think they should attempt to micromanage everything. And we also think that their attempt to micromanage everything means that they fail to do what they need to do in terms of those basic facilities. We believe that if you want to change your property and your neighbours are content to allow it, the council has no business interfering. We believe that if local people think that a housing development is a good one and something they would be happy to allow near them and developers want to build it, council should not be able to overrule them. We believe that private property is after all private property, not the council's, and that the reason that our planning system and our housing system are failing so badly is because the underlying principles are so very wrong. We believe the impact of these proposals could be to solve both our housing and growth crises. In the 1930s, it was a doubling of the houses being built that pulled Britain out of the Great Depression. The difference this time round, in terms of the problem getting out of this recession, is that our restrictive planning system is in operation. Developers have bought land at very high values and are now sitting on land banks, refusing to build. But new competitors cannot enter the system because of the high barriers to entry and anti-competitive nature of the planning system. All this means that we face a prolonged stagnation in terms of housing construction, even though house prices are at record highs. That isn't good for anyone, and it certainly won't get growth moving. The report points out that our urban renaissance has not been as impressive as is often thought. Between 2000 and 2007-08, almost 1 million people left our larger urban areas. The only reason our cities didn't go into stark decline was a large increase in international immigration. In the very city centre, there has been an improvement, driven by student numbers tripling and an increase in young single 20-somethings. The problem is that immigration, the delay of marriage, and student numbers are all factors that are about to stop or possibly even reverse. This means we cannot rely on them to power our cities forwards. In comparison, elsewhere, cities have been growing much faster, and we need to look at why that is.